Ladies and gentlemen, today we're diving into something that's both transformative and empowering, a concept that, if understood and applied, can change the trajectory of your relationships and ultimately your life. It's the art of saying no, not to others, but to the people who pull away, the ones who avoid connection, the ones who create distance. We all have those people in our lives who seem to be masters of avoidance. They are the ones who show up when they want, disappear when it's inconvenient, or hide when things get real. Now, the key to handling these individuals is not in trying harder or chasing them down. No, the secret lies in embracing no contact. And today, I'm going to show you why that's not a form of weakness, but a pathway to your empowerment. No contact is not about punishing anyone, nor is it about trying to control their actions. Rather, it's a bold, empowered decision to take control of your own life, peace, and well-being. This key point is crucial because many people mistakenly perceive no contact as an aggressive or retaliatory move, but in reality, it is one of the most profound acts of self-respect and self-preservation you can engage in. When you stop chasing someone who continually avoids you, you are making a powerful statement, not just to them, but to yourself. You value yourself enough to not tolerate behavior that devalues you. In relationships where avoidance becomes a pattern, whether it's emotional distance, lack of communication, or an inability to commit, the impact on you can be draining. It feels like you are constantly giving more than you're receiving, offering your time and energy to someone who doesn't reciprocate. Over time, this can erode your sense of self-worth and lead to feelings of confusion, frustration, and emotional fatigue. However, choosing no contact allows you to step out of this unhealthy cycle. Instead of chasing after their attention or constantly wondering what went wrong, you decide to honor your own needs, boundaries, and emotional health. It's important to understand that no contact isn't about cutting someone off to make them feel bad or punish them for their behavior. Rather, it's about creating the space you need to stop being reactive and to start being proactive in your own life. It's a way of breaking free from the emotional toll of trying to make something work that clearly isn't. By stepping away, you give yourself the freedom to heal, reflect, and rebuild without the ongoing drain of the other person's avoidance. Moreover, no contact forces you to stop seeking validation from someone who has repeatedly shown they aren't capable or willing to provide it. This is where the real empowerment lies. In many cases, people with avoidant tendencies struggle with intimacy and often create emotional distance to protect themselves from vulnerability. However, in doing so, they may unintentionally cause others to feel undervalued or unimportant. The cycle of chasing someone who avoids you can lead to insecurity and self-doubt. But when you stop chasing, you stop depending on their validation, and this shift is incredibly liberating. You begin to recognize that your worth isn't dependent on someone else's willingness or ability to show up for you. By embracing no contact, you reclaim your personal power. It allows you to rediscover what makes you truly happy, what your values are, and what you deserve in a relationship. It's an act of self-care that prioritizes your emotional well-being over the emotional game playing that often comes with avoiding individuals. It's not a sign of weakness to take a step back. In fact, it requires immense strength and self-awareness. It's a conscious decision to stop investing time and energy into someone who isn't willing to meet you halfway. In the process, you start to build a life where your peace of mind, happiness, and fulfillment are in your own hands, not at the mercy of someone else's inconsistency. When you engage in no contact with someone who avoids you, you're not just withdrawing from a relationship. You're taking a powerful stand to assert your own value. Think about it. If someone is continually avoiding you, they are not showing up in the way you deserve. They are sending a message, one that says they are either unwilling or unable to meet you where you are. And when this happens, it's easy to internalize their absence, to feel like maybe you're not good enough or worthy of their time and attention. But here's the truth. Their absence is not a reflection of your worth. It's actually an opportunity for you to step back and see just how valuable you are without their approval or engagement. When you step away from the dynamic of chasing after someone who is emotionally distant, you stop participating in a cycle of self-doubt. Instead of questioning your worth every time they don't respond or pull away, you start to recognize that you are worthy of someone who is emotionally present and engaged. The absence of someone who avoids you creates space for you to realize just how much you bring to the table. You don't need to beg for attention or fight for a place in their life. Your value doesn't come from their validation. It comes from who you are as a person. In fact, when you stop giving them your energy, you give yourself the space to appreciate your own strength and resilience. You can start seeing that your worth isn't tied to their willingness to show up. And in that space, you can begin to understand that you deserve consistency, care, and attention, qualities that should come naturally in a healthy relationship. Their avoidance is not a reflection of your deficiencies. It's a reflection of their inability to meet you where you need to be met. By removing yourself from the equation, you force the situation to reveal what it really is. The space you create by stepping back also shifts the power dynamic. When you're constantly chasing, it can feel like you are always at the mercy of their availability and emotional state. But when you enforce no contact, you no longer allow them to dictate your emotional reality. Instead, you take back control. In that space of absence, you become aware that you don't need them to feel whole. You don't need their attention to feel validated. You begin to see that your life, your happiness, and your emotional peace are entirely within your own control. What's more, their absence can be a powerful tool for them to reflect on their own behaviors. People who avoid connection often do so out of fear, insecurity, or unresolved issues. When you remove yourself from their life, you give them the opportunity to recognize the consequences of their actions. They may realize that their avoidance has led to losing someone who values connection, and this might prompt them to reevaluate their patterns of behavior. However, whether or not they come to this realization is irrelevant to your growth. The point is that you are no longer depending on them to validate your worth. Ultimately, the absence of someone who avoids you serves as a mirror to your own value. It shows you that you are worthy of a relationship that brings more to the table than just uncertainty and emotional distance. It's a lesson in self-respect. And the moment you stop allowing their avoidance to dictate your emotional well-being, you open the door to healthier, more fulfilling connections. When you choose no contact with someone who avoids you, you're not just creating distance in the relationship, you're also creating space for self-reflection. In the midst of the confusion and emotional turmoil that often accompanies relationships with avoidance, it can be hard to hear your own thoughts, let alone listen to your inner voice. Their behaviors, their mixed signals, their constant emotional pull can drown out your own needs, desires, and feelings. But when you step away, when you enforce that boundary of no contact, you provide yourself the precious gift of space. Space to reflect on what you truly want, need, and deserve in a relationship. This period of no contact gives you the time and emotional distance you need to reconnect with yourself. You are no longer focused on trying to interpret their every word or action, no longer in the cycle of waiting for them to show up or wondering why they pulled away. Instead, you can focus on your own thoughts and feelings without the noise of their inconsistency clouding your judgment. You can begin to ask yourself deeper questions. What do I want in my relationships? What are my emotional needs? What am I willing to tolerate? And what do I absolutely need to avoid? This space also allows you to examine the dynamic that existed before you initiated no contact. Relationships with avoidance can often be confusing and draining, with you constantly adjusting your behavior in an attempt to please them or keep things afloat. But when you take a step back, you get to reflect on whether you are compromising too much, neglecting your own emotional needs, or losing sight of your personal boundaries in order to maintain peace or connection with someone who wasn't able to fully engage. Through this reflection, you begin to understand your role in the dynamic and gain insight into how to avoid falling into similar patterns in the future. Additionally, no contact allows you to see the truth about the relationship and about yourself. It helps you realize that your emotional well-being should never be dependent on someone else's behavior or ability to engage. People who avoid emotional intimacy often create distance because they fear vulnerability or because they're not ready to engage fully. But this should not be an invitation for you to lose yourself in their emotional unavailability. In taking a step back, you start to recognize that your emotional stability comes from within and that your worth is not determined by anyone else's actions. As you engage in self-reflection, you may begin to notice the ways in which you've been neglecting yourself. You might discover that you've been so focused on maintaining the relationship or chasing the avoidance that you've stopped pursuing your own passions, goals, or self-care. This period of no contact then serves as an opportunity for you to reset your priorities. You may feel a renewed sense of energy to focus on your own personal growth, reconnect with your hobbies and passions, or spend more time with people who bring you joy and fulfillment. You are reminded that your life is not on hold waiting for someone else to show up. In the space created by no contact, you also open up the opportunity for healing. Emotional healing can only take place when you stop exposing yourself to the toxic cycles that have been draining you. With no contact, you give yourself the time to process any hurt, disappointment, or frustration you might have experienced. It allows you to let go of any lingering attachment or emotional investment in the other person's behavior and start to focus on what you need to heal and grow. Without their presence, you are no longer weighed down by their avoidance or the emotional tug of war. Instead, you can embrace your own healing process, free from the external influences that once kept you stuck. Through no contact, you create space not only for your own reflection, but for a deeper understanding of your needs and desires and relationships. You stop being preoccupied with how others are treating you and start focusing on how you treat yourself. It's a chance to reconnect with who you truly are, free from the noise of the avoidant relationship, and begin to rebuild a stronger, more self-aware version of yourself. When you engage in no contact with someone who avoids emotional connection, you are forced to confront a deeply important truth. Your emotional independence is not dependent on anyone else's presence or actions. Many of us have experienced the tug of relying on someone else for validation, approval, or affection. In relationships with avoidance, this dependency can be particularly magnified because their emotional unavailability creates a cycle where you're always waiting for their attention, their affection, or their presence. The more you give of yourself in an attempt to connect with them, the more you might find yourself losing sight of your own emotional autonomy. No contact is a powerful tool for breaking this cycle and reclaiming your emotional independence. When you stop chasing someone who avoids you, you're forced to face the reality that you are whole and complete on your own. For many, this can be an uncomfortable realization because we've been conditioned to seek validation from others, to feel loved and worthy only when we receive attention or affection in return. But by taking a step back, you begin to realize that your emotional stability does not need to be tethered to another person's willingness to meet you halfway. In fact, stepping away from someone who avoids intimacy forces you to rediscover what it means to be emotionally self-sufficient. This doesn't mean shutting yourself off from love or closeness, but it means learning to validate your own feelings and emotions without relying on someone else to affirm them. You begin to understand that you are enough just as you are, and your emotional well-being is entirely within your control. This shift can be liberating because it frees you from the exhausting cycle of chasing after someone's elusive affection. You no longer find yourself twisting yourself into knots trying to earn their approval or figure out why they're emotionally unavailable. Instead, you start to focus on your own needs, desires, and boundaries. This process of reclaiming emotional independence doesn't happen overnight, but it is incredibly empowering. You may realize that you've been giving too much of yourself to someone who wasn't able to reciprocate in a meaningful way. As a result, your sense of self has become intertwined with their behavior, and you've been waiting for them to fulfill your emotional needs. By enforcing no contact, you stop participating in this dynamic. It gives you the chance to heal and start seeing your own worth, not through their eyes, but through your own. Another key aspect of emotional independence is the ability to cultivate your own happiness outside of the approval or presence of others. This could mean focusing on personal goals, reconnecting with hobbies and passions that bring you joy, or spending quality time with friends and family who genuinely appreciate you. When you're no longer focused on someone who is avoiding emotional intimacy, you give yourself the space to create a life that feels full, vibrant, and fulfilling without waiting for external validation. Furthermore, no contact creates an opportunity to establish and strengthen your emotional boundaries. People who are emotionally unavailable often test your limits. either consciously or unconsciously. They pull you in and push you away, leaving you uncertain of where you stand. By embracing no contact, you assert that your emotional boundaries are non-negotiable. You stop tolerating behavior that diminishes your self-worth and start recognizing that your emotional needs are just as important as anyone else's. This practice of boundary setting helps you build stronger relationships in the future because you now know what you're willing to accept and what you won't. In this space of emotional independence, you start to take ownership of your feelings. You no longer wait for someone else to fill the gaps or to make you feel good about yourself. You realize that your happiness, your self-esteem, and your emotional peace are not contingent on someone else's actions. This newfound independence is not about rejecting love or connection. It's about understanding that love, true love, should come from a place of balance, mutual respect, and emotional availability. You no longer allow someone else's inability to show up to dictate your emotional well-being. Instead, you choose to be emotionally independent, rooted in your own sense of self-worth, and empowered by the knowledge that you can create the life and emotional stability you deserve. When you embrace no contact with someone who avoids you, you are not only taking a step back from a relationship that isn't fulfilling, but you are also making space for new and healthier connections to emerge. One of the most powerful aspects of no contact is the way it clears the emotional and mental clutter, allowing you to open up to relationships that align with your values, desires, and needs. When you stop investing in someone who isn't emotionally available, you stop wasting energy on uncertainty, confusion, and one-sided efforts. Instead, you give yourself the opportunity to attract and nurture the relationships that are built on mutual respect, trust, and emotional availability. The space you create through no contact is more than just a break from the avoidant individual. It's a reset, a chance to reevaluate what you truly want from your connections. When you let go of someone who doesn't show up for you, you stop accepting less than what you deserve. You begin to recognize the qualities that matter most to you in relationships: consistency, emotional openness, clear communication, and the willingness to invest in a partnership. By removing someone who avoids these qualities, you set a new standard for the people you allow into your life moving forward. As you create distance from the avoidant individual, you also create the space for new people who are ready to engage, to show up, and to meet you where you are. These are the people who will appreciate your time, energy, and emotional presence. The ones who will be there for you when you need them, who will share and support your growth. This is not just about finding romantic connections. It's about cultivating deeper, more meaningful friendships and building a community of people who are genuinely aligned with your energy and values. The absence of an avoidant individual in your life opens the door to new possibilities, new interactions, and the chance to build relationships that are based on true emotional reciprocity. Furthermore, when you let go of someone who's emotionally distant, you create the opportunity to focus on personal growth and self-improvement. Relationships, especially those with avoidance, can sometimes take up so much of our energy that we lose sight of our own aspirations, goals, and passions. But with no contact, you shift your focus back to yourself. You can invest your time in hobbies, interests, and activities that bring you joy and fulfillment. You may find yourself rediscovering parts of your identity that were put on hold while you were trying to make an unbalanced relationship work. This personal growth is key to attracting the right kind of relationships because it allows you to become the best version of yourself. Someone who is not dependent on anyone for validation, but instead stands firmly in their own sense of self-worth. Moreover, as you move on from the avoidant relationship, you also gain clarity about what you truly need from others. The distance allows you to reflect on the lessons learned and to identify patterns or behaviors you no longer wish to tolerate in future connections. You may begin to see that you deserve relationships where both parties are emotionally available, vulnerable, and willing to invest in each other. You stop settling for less and start building the kind of relationships that nourish your soul, that add value to your life, and that support you in becoming the person you are meant to be. In the long run, no contact creates a powerful shift in the way you approach relationships. It's not just about severing ties with someone who isn't a good fit. It's about creating room for the people who are. You begin to attract individuals who resonate with your energy, who show up for you consistently, and who align with your values and emotional needs. This new space you've made by letting go of the avoidant individual opens the door for connections that are deep, fulfilling, and reciprocal. As you embrace these new relationships, you will find that the void left by the avoidant person is filled not with loneliness, but with people who bring real value into your life. In this way, no contact isn't just about cutting ties with the past. It's about making space for a future filled with healthier, more meaningful relationships. In closing, the power of no contact with avoidance lies not in the action itself, but in what it represents. A bold declaration of self-respect and emotional autonomy. By choosing to step away from a relationship with someone who consistently avoids emotional connection, you're choosing to protect your own peace and emotional well-being. It's an acknowledgement that you deserve more than the uncertainty, confusion, and one-sided efforts that come with trying to engage someone who isn't willing or capable of showing up for you. No contact allows you to take a stand for yourself, to stop chasing someone who is emotionally unavailable, and to reclaim your power. The absence of someone who avoids you can be incredibly revealing. While it may initially feel like loss or emptiness, what you're actually doing is creating space for self-reflection, for understanding your own needs, and for discovering your true emotional worth. In this absence, you begin to recognize that your value doesn't depend on someone else's ability to meet you halfway. You don't need to chase after their validation, approval, or attention. Instead, you realize that you are whole, you are enough, and you are worthy of relationships that offer mutual respect, emotional availability, and genuine connection. Through no contact, you also gain the chance to strengthen your emotional independence. It forces you to confront the truth that your emotional state doesn't need to be tied to the presence or actions of another person. When you stop relying on someone else for your happiness or self-worth, you start to develop a sense of inner stability. This newfound independence not only empowers you to focus on your own growth and happiness, but it also helps you set stronger emotional boundaries. You become more aware of what you need from relationships and what behaviors you are no longer willing to tolerate. This process of self-discovery allows you to embrace your own emotional strength and to build a life where your peace is never at the mercy of someone else's inconsistency. Moreover, the power of no contact creates space for better, more fulfilling relationships to enter your life. As you disengage from an avoidant individual, you stop investing in a relationship that drains your energy, and you open the door for people who are ready to engage with you on a deeper level. These are the relationships that will align with your values, respect your boundaries, and contribute positively to your emotional well-being. By letting go of someone who is emotionally distant, you create room for connections that are grounded in mutual care, trust, and emotional availability. Relationships that add real value to your life and help you grow as an individual. In the end, the power of no contact is not just about cutting someone off, but about the transformation that occurs within yourself. It's about recognizing your own worth, standing firm in your boundaries, and taking control of your emotional life. It's about opening the door to new, healthier relationships that are based on mutual respect and emotional reciprocity. By embracing no contact with avoidance, you make space for the life and relationships that truly reflect your value, your emotional needs, and your capacity to love and be loved in return. No contact is a powerful tool that gives you the opportunity to reclaim your life, heal, and move forward with clarity, strength, and confidence. Thank you so much for your time and engagement. I hope the insights and reflections shared throughout this speech have been helpful and inspiring. Remember, the power to create positive change in your life lies within your own hands. Stay empowered, honor your boundaries, and never forget your worth. Goodbye for now and take care. Wishing you peace, growth, and all the best as you continue your journey forward.